Well, hello, 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 and thank you very much for clicking on this video today. So today we have a story, another story about reform. We seem to be on a little bit of a roll with them because there's been so much news about them over the past kind of week or so. It's kind of difficult to kind of not talk about it. And this maybe not be the biggest story, but it is a story that does demonstrate how completely and utterly deranged and insane reform are. So, Reform have backed. Sorry, before we get into this is a story that's coming from the Byline Times, so we'll be reading from them. Kudos for them to get this story, because I've not really seen this story anywhere else. It's a good piece of journalism on their part, so let's delve into this. So, there is a reform-backed amendment to Labour's new elections bill, which would see candidates who use the Irish language, Scottish Gaelic or Cornish face prison time. The new clause 107 to the Representation of the People bill, tabled by Reform UK's Deputy Leader Richard Tice and co-signed by every sitting Reform MP, so that's all of the bastards, would require all election publications material to be in English language or Welsh language only. So publishing campaigning material in any other language would become a criminal offence, punishable on summary conviction by up to 6 months imprisonment or a fine, and becoming an illegal practice for candidates, agents and parties, which is absolutely batshit insane. When you consider that Irish, Scottish Gaelic and Cornish are native languages that are very much part of the identity of people in Northern Ireland and Scotland and Cornwall, to ban them is just a pure piece of bizarre colonialism, which I wasn't expecting to see in 2026, but here we are. So, the penalties are drafted to apply across the UK, so all of the UK, including Northern Ireland, where the Irish language and Ulster Scots are protected in law and under the Good Friday Agreement, designed to end the decades-long civil war. And there's been a lot of discussion and conflict in Northern Ireland between the DUP, the Ulster Democratic Unionists, between the Unionists basically and the Republicans over the the Irish language and its usage. And so this would only escalate tensions on the part of the Republicans and would go very much against the Good Friday Agreement. And it is interesting that Welsh is somehow not picked out to be criminalised, despite the fact that it is also part of the Celtic languages of Cornish, Gaelic and Irish, which is almost certainly because Reform just so happened to have quite a few seats in the Welsh Parliament. So they won't ban that, but they will ban languages in parts of the country where they don't have political representation. So the banned languages other than English or Welsh would appear to criminalise election materials published in Irish, used in parts of Northern Ireland and Scottish Gaelic, including the bilingual leaflets routinely used in constituencies. So five of the 6 Cornish MPs, 4 for Labour, 1 for Lib Dem, have signed a joint statement at the bottom of this piece, which is talking about the piece in the Byline Times, condemning Reform's proposals. And the Scottish Nationalist Party, Mabon Kernow, I think it's pronounced, my Cornish is a bit rusty, I have to say, says it is unbelievable that MPs from the Reform UK have tabled the amendment to representations of the People's Bill in the House of Commons. The Scottish National Party, as is outlined here, have also come out strongly against the proposals. The SNP MSP for the Highlands and the Islands of Mar, for the Highlands and Islands, Mara Todd said, "This despicable anti-Scottish amendment reveals exactly what Reform really thinks of Scotland, and will threaten anyone publishing election materials in Scots or Gaelic with up to 6 months in prison. It's not even as if this amendment was introduced by one rogue MP. It was tabled by the Reform's deputy leader and co-signed by all of their MPs. Reform must now do the right thing and apologise to the people of Scotland for attempting to criminalise election materials written in Scottish languages and immediately withdraw this outrageous amendment." And an SNP source said Plenty of election material would fall foul of this. Lots of SNP campaign literature, especially in Western Isles, features Gaelic, even if the materials are not written exclusively in the language, though some are. And lots of SNP literature also uses Scots words and phrases, with Scots identified as a distinct language under the European Charter for Regional and Minority Languages. The UK ratified this charter in 2001. And since there is often an overlap, reform would then presumably have to increase funding for police to identify what they deemed English versus what was Scots. So basically you'd have police having to go through party leaflets, and even if they don't use all of a particular language, maybe if they only use a certain amount of Gaelic or Scots or Irish or Cornish, that would fall foul. It's an utter waste of time and money and police resources, and is a terrible attack on freedom of speech. Like, people should be able to write, parties should be able to write their materials in whatever language they want. If they want to write it in fucking Swedish, fine. Anyway, the SNP has previously offered Gaelic translations for party manifestos, something which would be likely illegal under Reform's amendment. So, Sophia Smith Goller, a language expert and author of How to Kill a Language, told the Byline Times that this move was plainly discriminatory. And that she then goes on to say, or they go on to say rather, it's discriminatory not only to other indigenous languages of the UK affected by this, the ones that aren't English and Welsh, but also to individuals who could be publishing political literature in any of the migrant languages we also have home here. She then added that Reform UK wants to frame language as a problem, as part of a wider problem, multiculturalism. This is part of a broad vilification of languages other than English. Britain's a signatory to the European Charter for Regional and Minority Languages, Smith said. It was the defining instrument that we have that protects and promotes language diversity and minority languages especially. They would take a very dim view of this too. A law like this would be pretty much unique in Western Europe, a linguistics journalist noted. It's not something that any of our peers have done. And then add a little amusing note saying this: What's funny is that to police this, you probably need multilingual policing. You'd actually have to require language skills in order to enforce it. I don't know if Reform are planning on creating multilingual jobs. I wouldn't recommend this as a way to go about it, but that's accidentally what they have created. So yes, people would actually have to, in a perverse twist, you'd actually have to increase kind of the knowledge of these languages in order to enforce the policing of them in an odd sense. So let's go on to the MPs and what they had to say. So Noah Law, the Labour MP for the Cornish seat of St Austell and Newquay, told the Byline Times, the fact that Reform would even think of tabling this amendment just goes to show how ignorant they are to left behind parts of the UK with their own distinct culture and languages. They are ignorant of Cornwall. And speaking on behalf of the Cornish party, Maybon Curnow, Councillor Loveday Jenkins said, "It is ludicrous that Reform UK are seeking to outlaw and criminalise the use of Celtic languages such as Cornish, Irish and Scottish Gaelic, as well as Romani," they note, on election materials. "I also find it extremely worrying that Reform MPs have little respect for the Cornish language and the national minority status of Cornish people. Instead of supporting one of the UK's historic Celtic languages, they want to send anyone using Cornish on election leaflet to jail. It's utter madness. The clause is so daft that it would even ban Maybon Curnow activists from actively campaigning, as we would not be allowed to use our party name on election materials as it is in Cornish." And for those and it outlines here that Maybon Curnow means Sons of Cornwall in Cornish. And to kind of talk about this a little bit more broadly, the Conservative MPs have also moved an amendment to ban election materials published in a foreign language, though unlike the Reform Amendment, it states that this would not ban campaigning in native languages of the British Isles such as English, Welsh, Cornish, also Scottish, Irish, et al., nor to prevent campaigning via the likes of BSL or Braille. And Maybon Curnow opposes any amendments to specify which languages can or cannot be used in election leaflets. All inhabitants of the UK should be able to read about party policies in a language that they speak. And kind of add more to this, one of the leading, the General Secretary of one of the leading Irish language body, the leading Irish language body in Ireland, whose name I'm not even going to try and pronounce because it is utterly nuts. I'm sorry, I really cannot speak Irish at all. I was told by on times that the move was very small-minded, and they go on to say, it is really a sad reflection on reform that they're not taking official languages of the UK on board, Northern Ireland included. It goes against the Good Friday Agreement, which called for the resolute action to support linguistic diversity that was agreed by the British government and the Irish government, and you expect the language now recognised in Northern Ireland would be included in any bill going through Westminster. Maybe they're simply not aware of the progress of the Irish language in the north of Ireland. I'd call them to update their knowledge of what's going on to ensure they're not taking language rights away. They should be adding to language rights. Many people have been educated through the medium of Irish. Many people use Irish as a daily language in Northern Ireland. The language itself is thousands of years old and part of a heritage of these islands. It's a language for all. It doesn't belong to any one group. The Irish language election materials are on the rise in Ireland. They said, it would be very unwelcome if reform were to take away the opportunity to have language seen by more people, which is happening in Northern Ireland. And there is something kind of perverse in saying, no, people in Ireland, you can't read election materials in Irish. You can't read election materials for Scottish people in Scotland, or Cornish for Cornish people, but Wales can, because Reform have quite a few Welsh MPs, so they're fine, but all these other languages are apparently unacceptable. It's utterly batshit. And they're then going to say, we're seeing Irish included in more daily living. The amendment creates such a serious legal jeopardy for people who use the language. The language shouldn't be used as a political tool. It's a language for all. It would lead to problems in the north of Ireland if legislation like that went through. Reform should make themselves aware of this and make sure they don't create conflict. So on Monday, just going back to this bill, on Monday reports emerged that representation of the People bill would be delayed until September, giving the new PM time to rewrite it if he wants to. It was due to be debated again today, so Tuesday. And Sophia Smith-Gola, who we heard from earlier, said, one way to stand against freedom of expression is to police language use, and that includes a multilingual person's choice between the language they speak. I don't know what Reform's justification is, but this is not the activity of a party that wants to defend free speech. They want greater political power. Politicians hold myopic linguistic attitudes. Will try to enact legislation limiting the population's language rights. That's very dangerous. And it mentions that Reform, Entice, and their crew of weirdos were contacted for comment, but they don't seem to have provided one. So, just to kind of go with the joint statement from the Cornwall MPs, I'll read it, because why not? The Reform UK has tabled an amendment to the representation of the People's Bill that would make it a criminal offence, that's worth to bear in mind, a criminal offence to publish election material in Cornish, carrying a penalty of up to 6 months imprisonment. As the 5 MPs representing Cornwall would fundamentally disagree. The amendment, NC 107, tabled by Richard Tice MP, and backed by all Reform MPs, would permit election material to be published only in English and Welsh. This is a direct attack on the Cornish language, identity and culture. We Cornish MPs are exceptionally proud of the fact that in January 2026, the government officially recognised Cornish, or Cerdwick as they say here, under Part 3 of the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages. As a result, Cornish has the same status as all the other Celtic languages across the UK, including Welsh and Scottish Gaelic. The inclusion of Welsh and not Cernywek in Reform's ill-intentioned amendment is demonstrative of their complete lack of understanding of Cornwall's unique identity and heritage, we wholeheartedly oppose the amendment in Parliament. So, just kind of summarising, it's kind of taking us all back from the beginning. So what really is getting at the bottom of this? Well, outside of the fact that the party that claims to be all for freedom of speech has actually demonstrated they're actually very happy to close down freedom of speech when it comes to criticising them, criticising their finances in particular. They do, in the most melodramatic way, attack anyone who dares questions their dodgy finances and say it's all a conspiracy pointed against them. And in the case of this, they're attacking people's freedom to read the language that they want and also speak the language that they want. Because are we going to believe that it will stop there? What if they decide at some point, why don't we actually impose bans on people actually speaking these languages? Or extending these bans outside of a political sphere and ban people from actually reading these languages? Given their contempt for these languages, I don't think it's too far away. I don't think it's not too far-fetched to believe that they wouldn't go in that direction. And it speaks to this kind of this kind of little England mindset that we see in these kinds of folks who have a very narrow and rigid view of what Britain is. Britain is actually quite a diverse place, and you don't need to be a scientist or a great thinker to work that out. You just need to have travelled through quite a bit of it. And these kinds of politics and these kinds of people are determined to basically stamp it out and make Britain just kind of one homogenous blob, that everyone will be the same, everyone will speak the same language, everyone will look the same, everyone will be the same kind of identity. There'll be no diversity whatsoever because they fundamentally hate it. And this is a very good demonstration of the kind of things that they hate. These people, it would appear, have a real hate boner, as they say, for the Celtic languages, except Welsh, because they have Welsh MPs. As I said, it's not necessarily the biggest story that you'll ever hear, but I think it is very indicative of the kind of reform mindset. It kind of lays out kind of what they really want to do to the UK, which is to control not only the language that people speak, but the language that people can read, and kind of rigidly control the UK's identity, and not really allowing people to kind of embrace their own identity, their own individual identity. But anyway, what do you think? I'm curious to know what people think about this one. So thank you very much for joining me on this long little rant today. I hope to catch you later. So have a good day. Bye-bye.